Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, all eyes on the forecast as a potentially catastrophic winter storm looms for the majority of the country. More than 160 million Americans are on alert for heavy snow, crippling ice, and brutal cold. The system stretches 2,000 miles Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, New York to Boston. Our Lee Goldberg is tracking the possibility of 12 straight hours of freezing rain and up to a foot of snow for some.
Authorities are warning we could see major power outages and massive travel disruptions. Cities like New York stocking up on hundreds of millions of pounds of salt, ready to respond. I'm Whit Johnson in New York tonight.
Outrage in Minneapolis. A 5-year-old boy returning home from preschool is detained by ICE, and agents take his father into custody. Gripping testimony on Capitol Hill, former special prosecutor Jack Smith defends his decision to charge President Trump for attempting to overturn the 2020 election.
President Trump was charged because the evidence established that he willfully broke the law, the very laws he took an oath to uphold. Grand juries in 2 separate districts reached this conclusion based on his actions.
An unexpected meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky in Davos as the Ukraine war rages on and children are targeted, stolen from their country and stripped of their identities. Tonight, our Britt Clennett embeds with the team trying to rescue them and bring them home.
This is draft notice for Russian army.
He looks so young. How old is he?
Maybe 17.
17 years old.
He asked us to save him.
President Trump now says the U.S. will have total access to Greenland 24 hours after announcing there was framework of a future deal for the U.S. to eventually acquire the island. Greenland's leader warns of a red line. The president unveils his Board of Peace, what the board is, who's on it, and how the rest of the world is responding. And the disco will be more than occasional in a few lucky cities across the globe. Harry Styles drops tour dates ahead of his highly anticipated 4th studio album.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with the monster storm set to impact more than half the country. 200 million Americans are on alert for heavy snow, crippling ice, and bone-chilling cold. The slow-moving storm is truly staggering in size, stretching 2,000 miles from New Mexico across the south, moving into the Carolinas and then into the Northeast. Potentially more than a foot of snow could fall on parts of the East Coast. Snow and strong winds are already creating near whiteout conditions outside Moreland, Iowa. One of the major concerns, dangerous ice causing widespread power outages. Lee Goldberg is standing by with that all-important storm track and timing and the states in that very dangerous ice zone. But first, Whit Johnson leads us off.
Tonight, millions of Americans across dozens of major cities bracing for whiteout conditions, crippling ice, and bone-chilling cold from a monster 2,000-mile-long winter storm. Overnight, lake-effect snow with thunder and lightning slamming upstate New York. Multiple states already declaring emergencies, including North Carolina. Residents in Charlotte stocking up for days, some critical supplies running low.
I'm getting ready. Got my shovel. Got my power bank.
We sold out of ice melt. We've got some sleds left. They're going quick too.
From across the Atlanta area to Jackson, Missouri to Oklahoma City, parking lots and gas stations packed, shelves stripped bare. Delta canceling flights in 5 states, most airlines offering to waive change fees. New York City bracing for 6 to 12 inches of snow. Sanitation officials promising they're ready.
When we look at a wide forecast like this, a long duration, a heavy storm coming in at an unpredictable time, we've got to prepare for the worst case scenario, and that's what we're doing.
Fueling this massive system, a long duration Arctic blast, making it feel like 50 below in parts of the upper Midwest by morning and below freezing all the way south. The extreme cold will strain power grids and could lead to blackouts. In 2021, a massive ice storm crippled the Texas power grid. Nearly 250 people died in the state. Now, with sub-freezing temperatures expected over multiple days, Governor Greg Abbott trying to reassure the public.
The ERCOT grid has never been stronger, never been more prepared, and is fully capable of handling this winter storm.
And Lindsay, this facility behind me has about 10 million pounds of salt. New York City has 42 locations just like this one with about 700 million pounds of salt. Officials say it's all hands on deck, not just for the storm this weekend, but the sub-freezing temperatures expected to follow for days. Lindsay?
Thank you. And let's get right to WABC's chief meteorologist, Lee Goldberg. Lee, can you remember such a massive storm like this in recent years?
This is really going to define a winter. We haven't had a real winter like this in a long, long time, Lindsay, and you can just see it by all the alerts that basically cover 60 to 70% of the country, whether it's the cold weather warnings in the upper Midwest for 50 below wind chills, or the winter storm warnings and ice storms to the south that could be crippling with deep freeze to follow, and the winter storm watches that now stretch into the northeast. So we're 24 hours away from seeing the first snow, ice, and rain start to break out across the deep south. Look at the icing from Lubbock to Texarkana over to Huntsville, and snow to the north in Memphis and Nashville. And on Saturday, this just only stretches out. You have a long line of ice from Waco to Wilmington and up to Nashville to the north side of Atlanta. Snow, Wichita, all the way to Roanoke and Norfolk. And then we head into the weekend and the snow starts to spread from the Tennessee Valley all the way up into the northeast. Now, there are still some questions with the storm track. Are we going to involve some mixing in this and cut down on some totals along the coast? Regardless, you're getting a good thump of snow out ahead of this anyway. And in the big cities, we're going to see some big snows from New York to Boston for sure. It's a tough forecast in D.C., but a high probability of 6 to 12 inches or more from Texas all the way into the interior northeast and right down to the I-95 corridor. And the problem with this storm, once we finish it, the cold doesn't go away. Much of the country encased in the deep freeze right till the end of the month. Lindsay?
All right, so no relief in sight, Lee. Thanks so much. Now to the outrage over images of a 5-year-old boy detained by ICE in Minneapolis. Agents took the child and his father into custody. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Minneapolis today and defended the agents, claiming they were protecting the boy. Matt Rivers has the latest reporting from Minneapolis.
Tonight, the haunting images sparking a firestorm. A preschool boy standing in the Minnesota cold, swept up in the ICE crackdown. School officials say 5-year-old Liam, wearing his blue hat and backpack, and his father, Adrian Alexander Conejo Arias, had just pulled into their suburban Minneapolis driveway Tuesday when agents took that father into custody. The school then saying an agent essentially used the 5-year-old as bait, directing him to see if anyone else was home before taking the boy away. The district saying Liam is among 4 students recently detained.
The sense of safety in our community and around our schools is shaken, and our hearts are shattered. And honestly, at the end of the day, children should be in school with their classmates.
But DHS telling a different story, saying ICE did not target a child, claiming Liam's father is an undocumented immigrant and fled on foot, abandoning his son in the driveway. Tonight, during a visit here in Minneapolis, Vice President J.D. Vance saying the agents were protecting the child.
What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death?
But the district says multiple people on scene did offer to take the child, but were refused. Vance broadly praising the work of federal agents, saying the vast majority are doing excellent work. But for the first time tonight, the administration telling me they are willing to discipline ICE officers, quote, when justified.
If somebody did something wrong, yes, they're going to face disciplinary action, but we're not going to judge them in the court of public opinion.
Vance saying he's trying to ease soaring tensions amid furious protests. Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bavino tossing a smoke grenade into an unruly crowd. Agents pinning this person to the ground, this stunning image of the pepper spray at close range.
And Matt joins us now once again from Minneapolis. Matt, do we know where that little boy and his father are tonight?
Yeah, Lindsay, his story, the chilling image of that little boy standing out in the cold, striking a chord with so many here. The family's lawyer telling us the father did come to this country legally. And to your question, Lindsay, tonight we've learned that both father and son are being held together at a processing facility near San Antonio. Lindsay?
All right, Matt Rivers for us. Thanks so much, Matt. Now to the gripping testimony on Capitol Hill. Former Special Prosecutor Jack Smith forced to defend his decision to charge President Trump for attempting to overturn the 2020 election, saying we had proof beyond a reasonable doubt. How he responded when asked if he expects to be indicted by Trump's Justice Department. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight in a hotly contested congressional hearing, former Special Counsel Jack Smith speaking in public at length for the very first time, saying he was right to indict President Trump.
Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal activity.
And he said he would do it again.
Based on the same facts today, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Democrat or a Republican.
Smith testifying he has no regrets despite receiving death threats and having been personally attacked by President Trump for charging him with illegally retaining classified documents, obstruction of justice, and engaging in a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. Charges Trump flatly denies and that were later dropped.
President Trump was charged because the evidence established that he willfully broke the law.
But Republicans attacked Smith from the moment he was sworn in, accusing him of being a politically motivated prosecutor trying to stop Trump from being reelected.
It was always about politics. And to get President Trump, they were willing to do just about anything.
Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz among those defending Smith, claiming hypocrisy by many Republicans who he claims changed their view of January 6th.
Steve Scalise, United States Capitol Police, saved my life. Lindsey Graham, when it comes to accountability, the president needs to understand his actions were the problem.
The hearing caught the attention of President Trump, who was thousands of miles away overseas, posting on social media, "Based on his testimony today, there is no question that deranged Jack Smith should be prosecuted for his actions." Smith suggesting he expects no less.
Do you believe that President Trump's Department of Justice will find some way to indict you?
I believe that they will do everything in their power to do that because they've been ordered to by the president.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. President Trump is suing J.P. Morgan Chase and its CEO Jamie Dimon, according to a lawsuit filed today. The $5 billion suit alleges the bank closed Trump's accounts in February of 2021 in the wake of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol for, quote, political and social motivations. In a statement to ABC News, J.P. Morgan said that the suit has no merit and they will fight it in court. President Trump is on his way back to the U.S. after a whirlwind trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He said we'll have more information on a framework deal for Greenland in 2 weeks. Our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is traveling with the president and has the latest.
President Trump heading home from Europe, insisting he got what he wanted. But tonight his framework deal on Greenland, anything but clear. This morning he gave different answers on whether the U.S. will now control Greenland as he demanded.
Mr. President,
he told me yes.
Greenland? Will you have control of all of Greenland, Mr. President?
How many countries? But about an hour later, he said this.
Does this ultimately mean that the U.S. will ultimately acquire Greenland?
Well, I don't know if I can say that, but it could be. I mean, it's possible. Anything's possible.
As of now, there is no deal on the table, nothing in writing. Greenland is part of Denmark, and Denmark says that's not changing.
I think it's clear for everybody that we are a sovereign state, and we cannot negotiate about that because it's a part of the very basic democratic values.
A U.S. official tells us President Trump and the NATO Secretary General discussed stationing additional U.S. military forces at bases in Greenland, something the U.S. already has permission to do under a 1951 agreement. Today, Europe's leaders making it clear they will stand up to the U.S. again if need be.
And this is why it is so important for all of us, also for our partners in Washington, to understand the difference between domination and leadership. Leadership is okay.
And tonight on Air Force One, the president asked again, is the U.S. going to own Greenland? He said we'll know in 2 weeks, something he said many times about other issues before.
Can you elaborate more on we're trying to understand what exactly the concept is here. Is the U.S. going to actually take ownership of it?
We'll have something in 2 weeks. There's a good spirit to get something done.
For more now, we're joined by Republican Representative Maria Salazar of Florida. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. You, of course, sit on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. You've talked before about the threats posed by China, Iran, and Russia. But as you know, it's been a week of back and forth with NATO over Greenland. The U.S. already has access to Greenland in terms of military bases and training. We are, of course, part of the NATO alliance. Are you concerned that our adversaries are not only laughing at the NATO dysfunction, but actively could benefit from it?
Well, I like what came out of Davos and the fact that the president was able to negotiate what seems to be a happy ending for everybody, which is that the 17 different bases that military bases that we had at some point during World War II and up until the 90s are going to be back in American hands. And that's pretty good, because I think if you look at it from another point of view, we're not only defending the United States from defending Russia and China in the Arctic, but we are defending the Western world as well, meaning Europe. So I don't think we should look at the process. Let's look at the result. And the result was pretty good for the president, for the Europeans, and for the Americans. So this case, I think it's closed.
With regard to Venezuela, you met with opposition leader Maria Corina Machado this week. Today, Edmundo Gonzalez announced that his son-in-law was freed from detention in Venezuela.
Yes.
What's next for this movement?
I think what's next is that Maria Corina needs to go back to Venezuela and reinstall and put together that network that she created during 2024 that proved to the world that they had won the presidential election fair and square. Now she's going to put together that machinery once again, and they are going to prove, I'm sure, to the rest of the world that once they are free and fair elections in Venezuela, the opposition forces will win, and they're going to be able to we're going to be able to then transition into democracy, which, they were one of the most stable democracies in the world until the last 25 years when the Chavez forces destroyed the institution, all the democratic institutions in that country.
What's your reaction to what appears to be President Trump's lack of support for the opposition movement to go in and take over?
Well, I don't see it as lack of support. He was with her over 3.5 hours a few days ago, and she was there with Marcos, Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, the President, and the Vice President. And the President came out saying that he was impressed by her, because she's impressive.
But really, technically, it seems that President Trump was in the driver's seat to say whether it would be Maria Corina or Delcy.
Look, we are in the business not of oppressing or conquering. We are in the business of liberating. And this is like a new model that we are sort of implementing in the Western Hemisphere. I know that it's a little bit slower than we would like for it to be, but at the same time, it brings stability, no boots on the ground. And we're giving the Venezuelans the opportunity to swallow or to start this new chapter in their lives, in their political lives.
Just this week, the New York Times released a story stating that a record number of Cubans are being deported in Florida. Today, we learned of an immigrant who died in an ICE facility, and the autopsy declared it was a homicide. You represent a Cuban-American stronghold in Miami, and you're also the daughter of Cuban exiles.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on these deportations and the conditions that some detainees are facing?
I don't like some of the things that I see. I do know that ICE is just following orders. ICE is doing its job, but we should change the directives. We should change the homework that we're giving to ICE. That's why I wrote the only immigration reform law in Congress called the Dignity Act, so we can reshape the whole immigration space, and whatever is happening right now with ICE, we can change the directives, and they will go back to doing what they would do best, which is to catch criminals, illegals or non-illegals. Let's catch the bad hombres, like the president said, but let's don't go after those Cubans who do not have a criminal record and they came in irregularly. Our immigration system is completely and absolutely broken, and only Congress, the halls of Congress, here is where we can write legislation to change that reality, and that's exactly what I did with the Dignity Act.
So appreciate your insight and your time, Congresswoman Salazar. Thank you for joining us.
To you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Today, the U.S. officially withdrew from the World Health Organization. President Trump signed an executive order last year on his first day in office ordering the move, but it took a year to take effect. A senior U.S. official today claimed the WHO has strayed from its core mission and acted against American interests on multiple occasions. The U.S. currently owes the WHO $270 million, but that same senior official says the U.S. is now no longer obligated to pay it. A former Uvalde school officer has been acquitted of charges for his allegedly delayed response to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary in 2022. Emotional scenes played out in court with families in tears after a jury found the officer not guilty on all 29 counts of child endangerment. Here's our John Quinones.
We, the jury, find the defendant.
The verdict was swift.
Not guilty.
Former Uvalde school police officer Adrian Gonzalez found not guilty on all charges that he failed to confront the gunman during the crucial first minutes of the massacre at Robb Elementary. Families of the victims stunned by the verdict, some weeping in the courtroom.
I mean, we had a little hope, but it wasn't enough.
Tonight, Adrian Gonzalez sitting down with us for an exclusive interview.
I did the best that I could with the information I was getting.
Gonzalez was the first officer to arrive, but he says he never saw the shooter and went into the school within minutes.
Do you feel you're being made a scapegoat?
When the videos came out and started playing, yes, I realized that, they handpicked me. They had an excuse for everybody else.
Gonzalez and his lawyers warned that a guilty verdict would have had a chilling effect on how officers respond to the next school shooting if they had to fear prosecution.
We don't know when, we don't know where, but it's going to happen again.
He was born and raised in Uvalde, spending 20 years as teacher and coach, but now says he and his family cannot go back.
This is a struggle for me, for my family, to get up and leave. It's hard.
Gonzalez says he understands what his acquittal means to the victims' families.
Every day when I go to work, I pray for them. I pray for them and their families, and not just them, but the community,
John Quinones joins us now from Texas. John, we know that there's still a pending criminal case against Uvalde Police Chief Pete Arredondo. What's he saying now after yesterday's not guilty verdict?
Well, Lindsay, we heard from Arredondo's lawyer, and he tells us that they are very encouraged by the Gonzalez not guilty verdict, and that they too now are looking to a full and complete exoneration. Lindsay?
John Quinones for us. Thanks so much, John. Coming up, oh dear, it's not the buck the bank was expecting. We have the dramatic moments. A Long Island bank got a major crash surprise. And as war rages on in Ukraine, our Brit Clinic brings us the heartbreaking story of Ukrainian children caught in the crosshairs of the conflict and the people willing to risk it all to help.
This is a whole network of re-education, militarization. This is about Ukrainian children being taught to hate their country and maybe even fight against their own people.
But next, as the World Economic Forum continues in Davos, we take a look at President Trump's new Board of Peace for Gaza by the numbers. Welcome back, everyone. Today, President Trump held a signing ceremony to establish his new Board of Peace in Davos today. The board, which will be chaired by President Trump, was originally billed as a committee to oversee the rebuilding of Gaza and approved by the United Nations Security Council in November. But the president himself, in a charter draft reviewed by ABC News, suggested the board's functions will extend further, with some key allies concerned that it may try to rival the UN. Let's take a look at the Board of Peace by the numbers. At least 25 countries so far have been confirmed as agreeing to join the Board of Peace, with representatives from 19 joining President Trump at today's charter signing. It's worth noting 5 key allies who've rejected invitations to join: France, Denmark, Norway, Slovenia, and Sweden, with other prominent allies yet to indicate a response one way or another. The charter draft said countries signing on would be given 3-year membership terms, but permanent membership could be granted to member states giving more than $1 billion in cash to the board within the first year. The White House also recently announced the 7-member founding executive board, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. As far as how this board would relate to the UN, President Trump a few days ago suggested the board, quote, might replace the longtime body. When he was asked if he wanted that at today's ceremony, he said that the Board of Peace had, quote, tremendous potential with the United Nations, and suggested that they could work with them. For more on all of this, we're joined by Dr. Richard Haass, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations and Senior Counselor for Centerview Partners. Thanks so much for joining us. As you look at the countries that have joined the Board of Peace, including those who are at the ceremony in person today, what stands out to you?
What stands out to me less is who's not there. Essentially, these are second-tier countries with very few exceptions, a couple who might qualify, if you will, as medium powers. The real question down the road is whether the United States can attract some of the major countries of Europe, some of the major countries of the Asia-Pacific area, who also happen to be, in many cases, our closest partners and allies.
What challenges would it present for the U.S. if none of these key allies end up even signing up?
Well, then it raises questions of legitimacy, relevance, capacity, whether it's to some extent politicized. It might, if these countries don't join, it might highlight the gap between this new grouping and the United Nations. So I think it's important to get meaningful participation again, both for reasons of legitimacy, but also capacity.
Is there a concern that these allies not joining could indicate a changing relationship with the United States?
I think there's more than a concern. I think it's very much a reflection. There's real questions about what the agenda is of the United States, whether this is yet another sign that the United States opted out of the international system that's evolved over the last 80 years. For all its flaws, it's the only international system most of these countries know and sign on to. So, yeah, there's real concern about what is the agenda of the United States, what does it mean for the UN system, and just as important, what is going to be the principles? What is actually this new body, this new entity going to do?
In your view, how realistic is it that this board could actually rival or even ultimately replace the UN?
Well, the UN's biggest challenge is itself, so that doesn't change. The real question for this new grouping is what is it going to do? Will it have a significant diplomatic role? Maybe. Is it going to tackle some of the difficult problems associated with the aftermaths of war? The kind of thing we're seeing in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen. One day we hope to see in Ukraine, what we're obviously seeing in Gaza. Well, those are enormous challenges. Those are on the short list of the most difficult challenges out there in the world, these war-torn societies. And essentially, how do you put Humpty Dumpty back together again? Enormous undertakings. And the first test will probably be Gaza. And so far, at least, there hasn't been a lot to show for international efforts led by the United States to move that along.
Richard Haass, thank you so much for joining us, as always. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, New York City's mayor is cracking down on hidden hotel junk fees. We'll tell you how he's doing it. And the countdown to the Oscars is on. We'll take you through the snubs, surprises, and the history-making nominations. Welcome back to Prime, everyone. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. 200 million Americans are on alert for extreme winter weather. At least 10 states have already declared a state of emergency. An ice storm warning has been issued for parts of the South. Bitter wind chills are expected in the Midwest, and a massive snowfall is heading to the Northeast. Former special counsel Jack Smith testified publicly for the first time before Congress today about his investigations into President Trump. Smith stood by his investigations and warned of potentially catastrophic ongoing threats to U.S. democracy. The president has denied any wrongdoing in the cases Smith brought against him. Both were dismissed by Trump's Justice Department. The FBI is reportedly investigating the death of former Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay, who died back in May. According to the Washington Post, the FBI is seeking information from one of Irsay's doctors who prescribed him pain medication and ketamine in the final months of his life. That same doctor signed Irsay's death certificate, which cited the cause of death as cardiac arrest. And the legal battle between It Ends With Us co-stars continues. Justin Baldoni asked a federal judge in New York to throw out Blake Lively's sexual harassment lawsuit against him. The judge did not rule on the request, but did question whether all of Lively's claims related to their film deserve to be heard by a jury. Lively stands by her claims. Baldoni denies the allegations. Still ahead, as the war in Ukraine nears its fourth year, our Brit Planet follows a group working to rescue Ukrainian children ripped from their families and taken to Russia. And a man is declared innocent 70 years after being executed. That incredible story coming up. In Davos today, an unexpected appearance by Ukraine's President Zelensky. He met with President Trump. The two spoke for an hour. Zelensky said that the meeting was positive and that he hopes that the boat sails toward peace. He also issued a sharp rebuke to Europe for not doing enough to stop Russia. As the war rages on, Ukrainian children have become targets, ripped away from their families, moved from their country, stripped of their identities, and sent away to Russian military camps, sometimes even drafted into the war to fight for Russia. Our Brit Planet was granted unparalleled access to a group working swiftly to rescue as many children as they can, taking risks in order to reunite them with their homeland.
It's a risky, precarious process. Anything could go wrong at any moment. A complex, clandestine operation to rescue Ukrainian children from Russia. Many escaping indoctrination or being militarized to fight against their home country. 3 days earlier at the Save Ukraine Center in Kyiv.
We call this underground railroad because you cannot openly take any kid to Ukraine, any kid from Russia or from occupied territories.
The exact routes they take can't be disclosed in order not to compromise future missions.
We had kids who've been punished.
But CEO Mykola Kuleba says it takes a network of both Russian and Ukrainian drivers to get these kids back.
Surely you have to pay people to transport and take these children from A to B.
We pay for everything. It's for free.
In the last 4 years of war, thousands of children have been forcibly taken to Russian re-education camps. An estimated 20,000 children disappearing.
Experts tell us that rather than transporting the children out of the occupied territories, Russia is taking a more systematic, clear approach to re-education, Russification, to erase their Ukrainian identity as the occupation becomes more settled.
The curriculum they're taught is militaristic, touting the heroism of Russian soldiers. In this video, posted at the start of January, played to school children in occupied Mariupol, Russian troops tell the students victory will be theirs soon. Kuleba shows me some of the official documents the children have come back with, stamped and signed by Russian officials.
This is draft notice for Russian army.
Oh, he looks so young. How old is he?
Maybe 17 years.
17 years old.
He asked us to save him.
A 17-year-old Ukrainian boy, and this is the notice for him to go to a military center, to be called up to join the army.
When your child is 16 years old, your child register for conscription. That's why many of parents who in Russian trap connecting with us, telling, please rescue my kid.
At a dormitory where children stay to adjust back into life in Ukraine.
So nice to meet you. Thank you for talking to us.
17-year-old Alexei describes how it was mandatory for his classmates to go to the military camp.
Це як обов'язково, бо якщо не поїдеш, не буде виданий атестат, не буде зараховано, що ти взагалі вивчився цей клас.
We've protected his identity because he still has family back in the occupied territories.
So what kind of military activities?
Там було декілька ось предметів. Це тактична медицина. Зараз була БПЛА, це безпілотні летальні апарати, строєва підготовка. Не пам'ятаю практика з самою зброєю, як її тримати, положення, команди. Тактика, здається, називався ще предмет. Там...
Were you scared that you would be sent to fight for the Russians?
Ось після 18 років, я знаю, що на строкову службу багато їм саме після, кому 18 років, хто стає на військовий облік, їх на строкову службу викликають.
While some children are temporarily held at facilities, thousands of others have been enveloped into a coercive adoption and foster program. 16-year-old Veronica was one of them.
Усі по-різному. Спочатку перші 2 неділі мене просто закрили в кімнаті. І першу неділю я сиділа там з дівчинкою якоюсь, наркоманкою. А другу неділю я сиділа повністю сама, ніяких розваг там толком не було. Лише одна книжка Достоєвського «Преступлення і наказання».
What are they trying to do by taking Ukrainian children?
Як на мене, це просто для того, щоб зробити їх проросійськими, по-перше. По-друге, відправити на війну як пушечне м'ясо, тих же хлопців. Дівчат як медиків кудись відправити.
On several official sites, we find evidence of children from the occupied territories taking part in military activities. In this post, it says 100 teenagers from all 4 of the occupied regions are taking part in a camp in defense of the motherland. It says training in firearms, drones, and cybersecurity. This video, posted on a social media account for the number 15 school in the occupied Melitopol, shows children learning how to assemble and load Kalashnikovs.
Hello, is this the number 15 Melitopol school?
We then make contact with that school.
You're a teacher of patriotic education?
And get on the phone to a woman called Vladislava, who tells us the children have 4 patriotic classes each week. Vladislava saying that at the start of the occupation, some of the Ukrainian children would cry, but now they are learning Russian songs and like Russia better. She hands the phone to a 10-year-old student, Valeria.
Valeria, do you feel Ukrainian or Russian?
Valeria says she doesn't understand the question. When we ask again,
hello?
Silence. The teacher saying Valeria has left. What we found lines up with a recent report by Yale showing a network of 210 military camps and re-education facilities.
According to the Yale report, this is a whole network of re-education, militarization. This is about Ukrainian children being taught to hate their country and maybe even fight against their own people one day.
While we're at the Save Ukraine headquarters, the team gets a message.
Right now you're talking to a boy.
Someone has reached out for help.
He's deaf, and we have only one opportunity to connect with him. It's a text message.
That boy is Maxim, a 17-year-old orphan who was living at a boarding school for children with disabilities when Russian soldiers took over his town.
What's he saying now?
It's dangerous, it's a lot of Russian soldiers, and he's really afraid that they will kill him and he couldn't protect himself.
24 hours after he initially made contact, Maxim has successfully crossed his first major checkpoint.
They are in Belarus now.
Okay, so they've successfully crossed the border into Belarus?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great news.
We still don't know if today they will receive all documents.
Okay, well, let's hope everything goes smoothly then.
The next morning, we join the team as they hope to collect Maxim at the border.
So we don't know right now, 40 miles or so from the border, whether Maxim's going to be able to cross.
Absolutely.
Three hours later.
Yeah, Maxim now.
Maxim's coming now. Here he is. We can't show you the border, but there's a young man, he's carrying 2 bags, walking across. Of course, we've got Elena who's going to translate and using sign language.
Ми тобі...
How are you feeling? It's a really emotional moment. We're having to translate through the sign language interpreter. He's clearly tired, but he's visibly very happy to be back here.
Let's go in.
There's still plenty of unknowns for Maxim as he navigates his new life. He'll be working with a psychologist and stay at this dormitory for the time being, but he's determined to get a job soon. There's still more children to be rescued from Russian territories, but as the war grinds on and Russia's front lines creep closer, the missions are getting more difficult. And Kuleba fears the worst.
We're really afraid that we will lose these kids forever or for decades.
Doing whatever they can. Our thanks to Britt Clinton for that. Coming up, the stunning reversal. What led to the exoneration of a man wrongfully executed for murder 70 years later? Plus, own a piece of American history. The storied artifacts up for grabs as the U.S. nears its 250th anniversary. A man is declared innocent after his execution. A deer breaks into a bank, and Harry Styles announces a global residency. These stories and much more in tonight's rundown. Dramatic video shows a deer crashing through a bank window on Long Island, New York, setting off a burglary alarm and a wild chase. Officers rushed to the bank expecting a break-in, but instead found a large male deer trapped inside. Police say the deer attempted to escape on its own and left quite the mess behind. Officers eventually lassoed the animal safely to get it back outside. Body camera video shows the rescue of a 2-year-old taken during a car theft in Colorado Springs. Police say the child was in the back seat of the car when it was stolen on Tuesday afternoon. About 2 hours later, officers found the car abandoned and located the boy. Police credit real-time surveillance technology, including license plate readers, for helping to track down the vehicle. The suspect remains at large and the investigation is still ongoing. A Dallas man has been exonerated 70 years after his wrongful conviction and execution. Then 19-year-old Tommy Lee Walker was convicted of the 1953 rape and murder of Venice Parker. The officers at the scene claimed that Parker, a white woman, said a black man was the attacker. The case relied on a coerced confession, questionable eyewitness claims, and an all-white jury that took less than 2 hours to convict Walker. The Dallas County Commissioner's Court has now declared Walker innocent by citing racial bias and prosecutorial misconduct. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani is cracking down on hidden hotel junk fees. The mayor announced a final rule banning extra charges often mislabeled as resort fees, destination fees, or hospitality service fees. The rule protects consumers in New York and New Yorkers traveling elsewhere. It also bans unexpected credit card holds or deposits. The junk fee prohibitions of the final rule go into effect in New York City on February 21st. As the United States nears its 250th anniversary, artifacts that tell the story of America are heading to the auction block. Among the highlights being auctioned, a rare 1776 printing of the Declaration of Independence, an edited draft of the U.S. Constitution, and a signed copy of the Emancipation Proclamation, each estimated at up to $5 million. The sale also features a portrait of George Washington, estimated at up to $1 million, and a painting of John F. Kennedy accepting the 1960 Democratic presidential nomination, estimated at up to $300,000. Bidding on the item starts tomorrow. International superstar Harry Styles is returning to the global stage with a 7-city residency tour. The tour will include 50 shows across Amsterdam, London, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, New York, Melbourne, and Sydney, running from May through December. Fans in the U.S. will have 30 shows to choose from at New York's Madison Square Garden. Ahead of the tour, the Grammy Award-winning artist is set to release his 4th studio album, Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally, on March 6th, with the new single Aperture premiering tonight. The road to the Oscars is officially underway after the 98th Oscars nominations were announced. Joining us now to break down this year's nominations, the snubs, and some history-making surprises is Variety's senior artisans editor, Jazz Tangcay. Welcome to the show, Jazz. So the big headline, the vampire slaying period film Sinners. I think no surprises that they were going into this as a favorite, but 16 nominations. Did that surprise you at all?
Incredible. No, I think we were looking recently at, this love for Sinners, and my colleague Clayton Davis was like, yep, it's going to break records. And this morning it sure did. It set the record for the most nominations for film ever, beating out Titanic in 1997, La La Land in 2016, and going way back to all about even 1950. But it shattered a lot of records today.
Really impressive. And of course, the nominations announced today aren't just any normal nominations. Some are actually history-making ones for many of the creatives involved. Explain that for us.
Well, Sinners is also the 7th movie to be nominated in every single technical category, including, song. But its cinematographer, Autumn Arkapaw, was the 4th woman ever to be nominated in that category. She's the first woman of color to be nominated. In the entire history of the Academy Awards, no woman has ever won. So that's a huge thing right there. Costume designer Ruthie Carter, who we know from Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, she won the Oscar there. She is now the most nominated Black woman in Oscar history. She has surpassed Oscar winner Viola Davis.
And many people seem to be surprised, calling it a snub coming out for the Wicked fans. No nominations for co-stars Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande this year. Was that a surprise for you?
I was surprised. I did think Ariana would get in, given she had recently been nominated for an actor award, formerly known as the SAG Awards. I thought craft-wise it certainly would. Porter Haswell last year won the Oscar for Best Costume Design, and you were thinking it was going to repeat. Stephen Schwartz also wrote 2 new original songs. It just didn't work with the Academy, even though the guilds recognized it.
And we can't get through an Oscars season these days without talking about our girl Diane Warren, who earned her 17th Oscar nomination, but she still hasn't won. We know that she got that honorary Oscar before, but do you think that this could be her year?
I wish I could say yes, but she has to overcome what has been on a winning streak. Yeah, this little song called Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters. So I think Diane, as great as that nomination is, I think she's like the Susan Lucci of the Oscars right now, and maybe next year.
Maybe next year. We also saw a few international films being given recognition today, and not just in their international film category.
No, Surat, which is Spain's international submission, was nominated in sound. The first time an entire team of women has ever been nominated in that category. And then there's Sentimental Value. 4 of the primary actors getting nominated in acting. And Stellan Skarsgård, who we all love, also made history as one of the first actors to be nominated in non-English speaking language movie in that category.
Jazz, thank you so much for joining us. And a reminder, you can catch the 98th Oscars on March 15th on ABC and Hulu. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Lindsay Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.